Hi everyone, welcome back to today's video, and today we're going to look at how I like to handle negotiations with landowners. So for those of you that don't know, I'm Rosie Cassidy, one of the team members here at Cassidy Group. We're a residential property developer business based in the Midlands, UK, with over 30 years of experience. So I get asked a lot, like, how do I handle negotiations with landowners? Is there certain tips and tricks you can use to try and get your offers accepted? And there's a few things I like to do. So a really important one is to understand the person that you're negotiating with. So there's different personality types out there, as you all know, and you'll find that certain landowners, you know, they want to sit and talk with you for longer. They want a small talk. They want to talk about their family and their weekend. Some people are very detail driven, so they just want to get straight into the numbers. They want to know the nitty gritty. And it's very important to understand what sort of person you've got in front of you, because some people don't want to hear you talk about the numbers. It will bore them and go straight over their head, and you'll lose their interest. And some people will find it rude if you don't show interest in their weekend and family. So it's very important that you identify the type of person and then match and mirror that in your energy back to them. That will really help you build a rapport before you even start talking about the deal. When you start talking about the deal and the site and the offer, the first thing to do is make sure you're confident in your offer. So this goes back to the appraisal process and making sure you're crafting your offer around what you can afford to pay for that site, so that later on you don't have to chip them or change that offer, because that just sours a relationship. So once you're confident with your offer, you've got a few options in the way you can present that. It's always important to be discussing offers over the phone or in person, because on an email the tone isn't always picked up and you can't gauge a person's response. So definitely you want them on the phone or you want them in person. Another good thing is offering in a few different structures. So you could just have a straight up offer. I will offer you £500,000 for your land on a subject to planning basis. Straight offer, explain to them what that means. Or you can offer joint ventures. So you could say that if you leave your land into the deal, you can get £800,000 out on the back end, depending on your client's aspirations. So that's very important in the early conversations to understand what it is they're after. So they could drop hints, you know, they're looking to move home, or they're looking to leave as much money as possible to the kids. So depending on what they've said to you, you'll be able to know whether or not they're wanting a quick deal, a slow deal, the most amount of money. You'll be able to craft your offer around what they have told you. And then once you've put forward your offer, be that on a pro rata basis, so you get more per number of units achieved at planning, what you then want to do is, if they're putting hesitation to that offer, you need to justify why you've offered that money. And a very important part of this is you don't want to be rubbishing their land. You want to be on their team, you want to be working with them. And what I mean by that is, let's say the land has contamination, or it's highly likely to be quite an uphill planning. You don't want to say that in a very negative light and say, you know, your land's going to cost thousands to remediate. You want to be highlighting that you still want to work with their land regardless, but it has got constraints. But frame that in a way that's positive and not just trying to tear their land down, because that will leave the landowner sort of uptight that you're just trying to rubbish their land for the sake of getting it cheaper. You want to highlight that you're going to work with them to get the absolute maximum value out of that site possible. Another thing I always like to say is, you know, if I'm able to pay more for land, then that actually means I'm making more money, because my profit margins are always fixed. So sometimes people say, oh, well, I was expecting more, you know, I was expecting 700,000, not £500,000. You say, well, I'd love to be able to afford to pay you 700, because that means I'd be making more. But unfortunately, because of the X, Y, Z constraints, I'm not able to do that. And sometimes that helps build that rapport to make them feel like you're on their side rather than us versus them sort of mentality. Another good thing you can say is, let's say they haven't accepted your offer or they find it a bit low. You say, well, how can I make it work for you? Put it back in their court for them to say what they need from you, and see if you can work with that by structuring the deal potentially slightly differently. Another good thing to do is, if possible, if there's comparables available, so sometimes you may find sites available on Rightmove, use them as comparables. So, you know, this site, it's for a similar number of units to what could be achieved on your land, but it has planning and it maybe doesn't have contamination, for example, and they want 600,000. I could buy that tomorrow. So that's why I can't pay 700,000 for yours, because it wouldn't make sense. So that's why this site's more valuable than yours, and therefore justifying your price of, in this scenario, £500,000. The key thing is rapport, and to always actually be working with the landowner, to never make it an us versus them situation. Always keep it as friendly as possible, as positive as possible, but equally you want to be informative, detail the reasons that this site has issues, because every site has its own individual issues, and why therefore that justifies the purchase price you're offering. Another good point, sort of a final point, is let's say the site needs remediation work or some demolition on site, and you've allowed £30,000 in your appraisal for this. A lot of landowners will say, no, it's actually a lot cheaper to do that work than what you've allowed for, so therefore my land value's higher. What you can do in that scenario is say, okay, I will offer for your land, and whatever, and it will be on the basis that you've carried out this work yourself. So I will increase, let's say, the 30,000 that I'd allowed for the demolition in my appraisal onto your land value, but in return, when I buy that land, I expect it to be cleared. Normally that calls the landowner's bluff, because obviously they don't actually know what typically things cost, nor do they want to carry out the works themselves, but it shows goodwill on your side that actually, you don't want this cost either, and if they can do it cheaper, let them go ahead. And that's the key thing really, is justifying your price and keeping that rapport going, keeping it positive and friendly. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video, you found it useful, got some nuggets of information out of it. As always, if you have any ideas for content, comment that below and I'll be sure to do a video on it. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you are keen to learn even more about property development, then click the link below where you can register for our free webinar.